Welcome to the Pharmacist's Voice Podcast, episode 304. I am your host and Ohio pharmacist, Kim Newlove. Today we are talking about cetirizine. This is part of my drug pronunciation series. We are still working our way back through the alphabet from A to Z. We had just started over just a couple of episodes ago, and this episode covers the letter C. C is for cetirizine. I need just a couple minutes for a sidebar conversation or an anecdote as we get started. I promise this will not take but a few minutes. I just want to let you know, especially if this is the very first episode you have ever listened to in this series, I am one of those people who cares about drug pronunciations. I am not the pronunciation police, I just care about drug pronunciations. I help people from all walks of life in the United States say drug names right. I have pharmacy people listening to this podcast, voice actors, journalists, probably some politicians, and more. I am going to get on my soapbox for just a second. If you want to learn how to say drug names correctly, you are listening to the right girl. Saying drug names the right way earns trust, and I care about you, the listener, my audience, earning trust too. My pronunciation series is here to help you, my audience, say drug names confidently and feel less frustrated learning them. And why is saying a drug name important? Again, to earn trust. Let me tell you about an experience that I had just this week. This is the whole reason for I don't want to call it a power rant, but the anecdote or me getting on my soapbox. What happened was someone said drug names, chemical terms, and biological terms incorrectly and lost my trust. They lost my trust in what they were saying, and it rubbed me the wrong way too, I'll be honest. They took me out of the moment, and I was disappointed. The good news is that it was not a medical situation. I was not in clinical practice at the time that this happened. No one was harmed. You see, I have been listening to an audiobook this week. I am really enjoying it, even though I sound very serious. I'm really enjoying it, but there have been a bunch of mispronunciations in it. Has this ever happened to you? Maybe with an audiobook, but say you're a subject matter expert and someone mispronounces terms that are related to your area of expertise. When that happens, it's abrasive. The story and the performance in the audiobook that I'm talking about are really good for the most part. In fact, I can't wait to hear how the story ends. But this is one of those teachable moments, and I have a podcast, so I would like to talk about how my fellow voice actors can avoid disappointing their audience, much like you medical folks listening to this can avoid miscommunications with your fellow healthcare professionals and your patients just by learning how to say drug names right. If you are new to this show, welcome. This is not my typical kind of a pronunciation episode, but hey, we're going with it. Again, my name is Kim Newlove. I am a pharmacist by training, and I have experience in hospital, retail, compounding, and behavioral health. I made a career transition to author, voice actor, and podcast host. If you would like a copy of my book, I actually have it for free right now on kimnewlove.com/podcasting. It is a podcast planning guide for pharmacy professionals. The title is Pharmacist Podcaster, a podcast planning guide for pharmacy professionals. I wrote the book and I narrated it. Part of being a voice actor for me includes narrating audiobooks, including my own. Back to the sidebar here. Saying drug names right is important, and it starts with easy drug names, and it builds on up to the harder ones. Once you learn where to find the right pronunciations, how to break them down into syllables, where to put the emphasis, meaning which syllable gets the emphasis, and then practice saying the drug name, you'll be able to get other drug names right as time goes on. From the easy ones like acetaminophen to the harder ones like Telimagene laherparepvec, you can say any drug name right if you try. I believe in you. So you're probably wondering at this point, what book am I listening to? What set me off? Why the sidebar? Why the anecdote? I am listening to Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmis and read by voice actor Miranda Raisin. I have a Bachelor of Science degree in pharmacy and a minor in chemistry. I feel mighty pretentious pointing this out, but the narrator of Lessons in Chemistry mispronounces chemical terms, drug names, and biological functions. As a medical person with a chemistry minor, I gotta say, her performance is less believable because of all of the mispronunciations. She got my panties in a bunch. Just 3 examples of mispronunciations, and then I will move on. She says acetic acid instead of acetic acid, acetyl salicylic acid, I believe that's how she said it, instead of acetyl salicylic acid, which is aspirin, so common. And instead of an OB patient dilating to 10 centimeters prior to childbirth, she says dilating. How can I believe this character is a chemist or not even a medical person, but how can I believe that this person is educated in science when she can't at least say chemical terms right? Come on. Get the emphasis on the right syllable. Emphasis on the right syllable. I'm trying to be funny here. Again, my panties are in a bunch. If you are a pharmacy student or a pharmacist and you can't say drug names correctly, but your patients can, your coworkers can, and the other healthcare professionals you work with can, you may lose their trust. If my drug pronunciation series is the very first time you have ever heard these drug names, I encourage you to take drug pronunciations seriously. Safety and trust are at risk. I often go over fairly simple drug names in this series. You can use the strategies that I use in these simple drug name episodes to break down any drug name you need to say forever and ever so that you can get it right for your patient, your audience, and yourself for all time. Earn that trust. It's yours to gain or lose. That does it for my sidebar or my anecdote, my rant, whatever you want to call that. Let's move on to the drug pronunciation portion of this episode. What is cetirizine? Cetirizine is technically in the antihistamine category. Your patients will probably call it an allergy pill since it treats allergy and hay fever symptoms. But it can also be used for hives, itching, bug bites, and more. The brand name is Zyrtec, and the generic name is Cetirizine. Just in case you are new to this series, let me tell you real quick how it works. I break drug names down into syllables, tell you which syllables to emphasize, and then I share my sources. The written pronunciations can be helpful in addition to listening to the spoken ones, so you'll find the written pronunciations in the show notes for episode 304 on thepharmacistvoice.com. Let's go with the generic name first. We've got cetirizine. Cetirizine has 4 syllables. C like citrus, tear like crying a tear, which is a short I sound or a schwa I sound, and zeen, which rhymes with teen. Put that all together and you get cetirizine. Emphasize tear. See if you can hear the emphasis when I say it again. Cetirizine. Where did I get my information? You're probably wondering. I got my information from the USP Dictionary online. That is my favorite resource for generic drug pronunciations. There is no dictionary for brand drugs, only generic drugs, and the generic drug name pronunciation dictionary is the USP Dictionary online. Let's move on to the brand name, which is Zyrtec. Zyrtec has 2 syllables. Zur like purr, which is the sound a happy cat makes, purr, and tech, which is short for technology. Put both syllables together and you get Zyrtec. Which syllable do you emphasize? Good question. I tend to emphasize zur, but I couldn't find the written pronunciation to back that up. Instead, what I did was I went to YouTube. The drug known as Zyrtec actually has an entire channel. So there's a YouTube channel for Zyrtec, and that's where I found at least 5 commercials with the Zyrtec pronunciation that I now use. If the drug company has paid for a commercial with that pronunciation, I typically go with it. Please note that I have been known to call this one Zyrtec instead of Zyrtec. I learned it as Zyrtec. If you say Zyrtec too, you're in good company, but if you're learning this drug name for the very first time, please know that the drug sponsor intended for it to be pronounced Zyrtec. It is also in Merriam-Webster's online dictionary as Zyrtec as well. I'll put a link to the Zyrtec YouTube channel and Merriam-Webster's online dictionary in the show notes on thepharmacistvoice.com. Let's review. After my anecdote there at the beginning of the episode, we talked about the pronunciations of Cetirizine and Zyrtec. I broke both drug names down into syllables, told you which syllables to emphasize, and then I shared my sources. The written pronunciations are in the show notes, and that's all I have for you today. Thank you for joining me to learn how to say Cetirizine and Zyrtec. To find the show notes for this episode, go to thepharmacistvoice.com, click on the podcast tab, and search for episode 304. In the show notes, you'll find the written pronunciations for Cetirizine and Zyrtec. You'll also find a link to the USP Dictionary online, a link to Merriam-Webster's online dictionary, which is a free resource, a link to Zyrtec's YouTube channel, links to the other 42 episodes in my drug pronunciation series, my social media links, and more. LinkedIn is my favorite. Please feel free to reach out to me and connect. If you are looking for a medical narrator for your voiceover project, I can help. Among other things, I am a medical narrator. I also am an audiobook narrator. Go to thepharmacistvoice.com, hit the contact tab, and leave me a message. If you know someone who would like to learn how to say Cetirizine and Zyrtec, go ahead and share this episode with them. And if you like this podcast, please subscribe to or follow the Pharmacist Voice podcast on your favorite podcast player and YouTube to get each new episode right when it comes out. Thank you so much for listening today. I will talk to you next week.